Aaron. Thank you very much for joining me on the Self Reflections podcast. You are coming to us from where exactly?
Surrey, British Columbia, Canada.
That's so amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. To kick us off, Aaron, can you start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a father of two sons. One's 15 and one's 8, and been married for be about 6 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And in your professional life, tell me a little bit about yourself in your professional life.
A mental wellness coach with founded Engage Coaching Group. Yeah, I've been running the practice for about 7 years now.
Amazing.
Yeah.
With that, you mentioned you are the founder of Engage Coaching Group. Can you share a little bit about your journey on what led you to start that?
Yeah, as a kid, I actually dreamed of being a teacher. It was when I was little, I actually would, to help myself fall asleep at night, I'd put my head under my pillow and imagine that I was teaching the grade 6 or 7 class. And I imagined that I was one of the teachers that I had, and I kind of mimic what they were doing, but that would help me fall asleep. And so I always had this desire to educate. And then I went to university. I took business, and I majored in human resource management. And I loved the training and development side of that designation. And so I again, this passion to teach people was there, and I actually ended up in sales positions because I couldn't get an HR job because they wanted you to have experience. And out of university, I was just brand new. But I still had this desire to educate people. And through the sales positions I was in, I ran across, some of the big names that we still hear today: Brian Tracy, Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar. I can't even say his name. Zig Ziglar. It's like a tongue twister there for me for some reason. But yeah, so some of these speakers I was following, and I'm like, this is an interesting profession that they're in. They're training people. They've written books, and so it dawned on me that how do I do this? How can I step into this? And so over a period of time, and I can talk a little bit more about what got me there as I go through things today, but eventually was able to get to a place where, okay, I'm ready to start to help especially men and educate them around the different areas around mental wellness and that.
Mm-hmm. And I love how you described there where it was something that was always a passion. It was something that guided you to explore further, and as you expose yourself to things in the world, things then started to align, and you kind of felt like you could move into that space and be a beacon for support for others. And that's a beautiful thing to be able to give to the world. Aaron, you said that things kind of, eventuated from there. And being a coach of Engage Coaching Group, that's not also the only thing that you are. Tell me a little bit about what is something that I know you shared with me that was a really amazing accomplishment for you.
The writing my book, being an author of my book. Yes. Thought it was a trick question there for a second.
It was.
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah. So very, very excited. A number of years ago, I had this book idea, and it on the first week that it launched, it became an Amazon bestseller, Engage, Connect, Grow. And it really is a workbook, and it's it includes a variety of different exercises to help people get to the heart of what truly matters to them. There's a total of 52, so they can essentially just do one exercise a week. And I was just very proud of that accomplishment to be able to bring that to the world.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure there's so many other accomplishments, being, having a partner, being a dad. But I think the one that I was really interested in, especially in today's podcast, was really exploring being an author. And so what actually motivated you to write Engage, Connect, Grow?
It's actually my second self-published book. I wrote another one a number of years before that, and it's called 100%. 100% of life is between your ears. And it was from a basketball coach. He used to say 80% of the game is between your ears, but he'd never explain it to us, right? He'd always just say that while we were practicing at practice. But for basketball, we'd be at the center of the gym doing our stretching, and he'd be walking behind us, and he'd just keep repeating this phrase. He'd say 80% of the game is between your ears. And he would never actually explain what he was talking about, because after we were done our stretching, we'd then go work on our offensive drills, our dribbling, the defensive drills. I thought I had to run faster, jump higher, and shoot better to play basketball. I didn't understand what he was talking about. And it was the mental side of the game, which I actually completely struggled with, because a lot of the coaches, especially this one in particular that I had, his way to motivate you if you made a mistake was to yell at you, and that didn't work for me. And whenever we had the assistant coach take us out to a tournament and support us, I actually played better, because that coach was a lot more supportive and responsive to how I like to be taught and coached. And so from learning that, and it took me till university to kind of connect the dots around the mental side of the game, but also the mental side of life. Because as I got into university, I was dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety, and really trying to figure out like what's going on in my head here. And that's where writing Engage, Connect, Grow really inspired me to help others. There's got to be other men out there, even I wrote it for corporations as well, organizations, so other organizations that may need help with the employees getting stronger mentally, to be able to, perform better, but also just, be a better person and be the person that they want to be. Yeah.
And we'll talk about the details of the book in a moment, but even the title, I think, is so profound. Engage, connect, and grow. I think, we are in a mindless world. We have so much around us that promotes mindlessness, and to be able to then acknowledge that the first step is to engage with what you're doing with yourself, to then be able to find a better connection with oneself, with what's important to you, before one can make the move to grow. I really, really love the title, and I think it beautifully sums up what the book is trying to help individuals achieve through the use of it.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it came to me of separating into 3 sections, so that having that, the engage portion is really around deciding to take action. When you start an engine, you're engaging the engine, you're deciding to move forward. And so that's what I was trying to emulate it into a word to speak to somebody that's maybe they've been through a lot of challenges and they've been hesitant, but now they're ready to take that action. They're ready to engage and look at the internal stuff that's going on versus just trying to fix things externally. And then the connect portion is twofold. It's connecting to self and connecting to other. And then the grow portion is how to keep growing, because I always thought that I was trying to I'd get to the destination. I'd figure out my self-confidence. I'd figure out my self-worth. I'd get that all figured out, and then I'd be done. I wouldn't have to do anything. And what I've definitely learned is the grow portion is always going to be there.
Yes, my clients will know this. There are times where I actually have to break the news to them. That's sometimes really confronting and hard to hear, that it kind of never ends. Not the pain never ends, or the struggle never ends. It's more so that the work and the upkeeping and maintaining of the progress is what never ends. Why? Because that then allows us to keep growing. Growing is not a destination. It's an ongoing process. And so at first it is quite challenging to hear that, because people see it as work. People see it as something so hard to upkeep. And I think even just with your tool of the book, helping them through that it doesn't have to be so daunting and so negative. But I really like that you've pinpointed the fact that it is an ongoing journey of maintenance and care for self. Both of us, I know, Aaron, have struggled or navigated with low self-esteem at different stages of our life. Could you share some of the ways that it impacted your life, especially from a male perspective?
Yeah, and I alluded to some of it with regard to sports and playing basketball. Like it just, I struggled. I loved playing. I played basketball and volleyball in high school, and I loved the game. And I did really well when I was playing with my friends, just on our own. But once it started to get competitive and that mental side of the game started to play in, I didn't quite understand it. That's where I was not, I didn't get to play as much, right? I didn't get to play as much. And my friends, I didn't feel as connected to my friends sometimes because they were doing well. They seemed to be able to handle the pressure and the ability to succeed. And I didn't. And that also was true in school. I felt like I was having to work a lot harder than my friends. And because a lot of like one friend in particular, he didn't have to study, which I didn't understand. Like he could just quickly read and review notes from, for a science test or a math test, and he was done. And I had to be like doing exercises over and over and over again to be able to memorize the concepts. And so it impacted my confidence from a learning perspective. And then as I, throughout university, I didn't know how to use my voice. I didn't know how to stand up for myself. And so as I became an adult, and even graduating from university and getting into the workforce and that, like I was I still am a recovering people pleaser in some respects, but I really was just there to try to please my boss, try to please my coworkers. And so it impacted my ability to just be myself, right? And to actually get what I wanted versus just trying to play in this game where, in this dynamic where everybody else is getting what they want, but I'm not feeling like I'm really happy at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. How did that impact your life mentally and like emotionally, do you think?
I look back and I probably may have been diagnosed with depression in high school, but I was never diagnosed until my kind of mid-20s or mid to late 20s. But it definitely, I would have these low periods. I would have, it could be just 2 weeks or it could be a few months where I was just, everything seemed impossible. Everything seemed bleak. Everything seemed negative. And I remember, especially in high school, I was just wondering, okay, when is this low period going to end? Like I just wanted it to end. Like it was just so stuck. So I was so stuck. And so I was just struggling with how to get out of it. And then all of a sudden things would shift, and then I'd be back being confident again. I wouldn't let little things people say like really impact me. There'd be a shift and I'd be able to handle things again. But then I find myself worrying about, okay, when is that low period going to come up again?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what we do find when we do struggle with certain mental illnesses or health concerns, it is cyclical and it can be situational. And a lot of what's going on in our own dialogue and our own belief system can then impact it. So like you've mentioned there were moments where it was confidence building, but the dread of having those dark moments again could easily then start the spiral to those dark moments happening again as well.
Yeah, totally. And it could just be something like, and it could be something simple that someone said to me where I'm feeling completely confident, I'm feeling fine. And then someone makes a comment where it, for some reason, triggers something inside of me that I've done something wrong or I'm bad. And it may just been kind of like maybe a casual comment that was not intended to do anything to me. But then right in that moment, I'm now back in that dark place. Right. And it just, it could be a tone of voice or just the words that someone uses, or that I've made a mistake and I'm embarrassed. And then I'm like, oh, okay, there goes my confidence.
Yeah, and we want to normalize that naturally is going to happen, especially when we have very ingrained belief systems like I'm not enough, or I'm unlovable, or I'm a failure, or I'm defective in some way. They're naturally going to bring about this fixation on us trying to find evidence for them being true rather than the opposite. So we often pick up and exacerbate maybe some of the comments people might say because we're seeing it through the lens of that belief system. And that sounds very much what you were experiencing there.
Definitely. Yeah.
You mentioned that, low self-esteem, periods of depression. In your journey, were there other difficulties for you as you were navigating both of those?
It's like my career, I definitely struggled with just trying to figure out, what worked and what didn't. And, I was kind of going from job to job. If I'd get to a point where, because I was in sales and you had to present in sales. Presentations were key. And in university, I actually tried to avoid as many courses like I could that had doing an oral presentation as a requirement. But then once I got into third and fourth year, I had to present all the time. And then when I get into the workforce, if I moved along in a position to the point where I knew I was going to have to present to a large group, I started looking for another job.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I would, then in some ways work with a manager that was okay with doing the presentation, and then I would do the one-on-one interactions in that. So, but then it also, being in sales, there's a lot of pressure to reach your target. So if I'm, when I'm new to the role, I'm more motivated, and I'm just gonna do the best I can. And usually the first year I do all right, and then second year they're going to want more from me. They're going to expect higher results from me, and then that pressure would actually pull me down again, and I would I would just feel like, okay, this is going to be impossible. How am I going to do this? And I compare myself to my colleagues that are doing phenomenal, and wondering, okay, how am I going to actually accomplish these goals that are expected of me? And am I going to lose? And then those negative thoughts come up. Am I going to lose my job, or these kind of things?
What you described there, and I wrote it down actually, it sounded like your coping mechanism was avoidance. And like you said, people pleasing and kind of avoidance, right? You were flipping a little bit between the two.
Oh, yeah.
And if I'm to share a little bit even about my own journey, I think my coping mechanism was like overcompensation, perfectionism. So we want to highlight as well that every person, no matter male or female, you're going to have ways to cope with some of the self-esteem, low mood, anxieties, belief systems. And it's okay that those things are there to try and help you navigate the world. And we also want to be building a sense of awareness that if those things are happening for you and it is hurting your progress externally or even internally, it is something that you can normalize as part of your protector mode kicking in to help navigate times where you are triggered or activated, and also be a bit cautious of how much you are relying on those, and is it actually then leading to further challenges for you where, you might, like you've described in your experience there, Aaron, it's periods of kind of avoidance, which then leads to work not getting done, which then leads to a pressure cooker, which then, one then, goes into overdrive to try and get everything done. So I can very much understand the different types of coping we all naturally fall into.
Yeah, and when you bring that up, it also reminds me that I also would be on the flip side, where if I wasn't avoiding, I would just go all in, and I'd be just working, crazy hours, and just, okay, I'm just going to keep going here until I get the results, which would, result in me burning out eventually, because I'm just putting too much energy into my work and not taking any breaks. So yeah.
Yeah, feel that one.
Yeah.
Aaron, in your book, you discuss how important self-worth is for personal growth. For those listening who may struggle with low self-esteem or limiting beliefs, what steps or practices would you recommend that worked for you to start transforming these beliefs?
Yeah, I think I think the first step that I recognize was just being aware of the thoughts that are going on. And I found writing those thoughts down actually helped with validating if they're actually true, because sometimes what's going on in our head, it seems like it's valid and true, but once you put it down on paper, you're like, hang on a second here, that's not true. And you can actually rate it out of what percentage of this feels true, because maybe 10% feels true, and you can say, okay, it's not 100% true, it's only 10%, right? So that can actually bring some perspective in. Okay, in my head, I'm believing this is 100% true. This is actually not true about me. And then be able to flip it, say, okay, this, if I'm saying I don't matter, I don't belong here, to be able to flip that and say, what's the actual positive statement of that you can start to focus on, and to be able to, essentially we're almost reprogramming our thoughts, and you're taking that positive message, and the more you remind yourself of that, and it may feel a bit weird in the onset, just to be able to affirmations in that they can be powerful as long as you're at a place where at least you're believing a part of it. So if you're saying I belong, like an affirmation will not, to me, it doesn't work if you don't believe in it, right? But if you can, if you're believing 10% of that you do belong, then go all in 100% of that 10% and just believe that 10. And then over time, you may find that it actually grows to 20 to 50, but it is, I found for me, it's almost having to look at it like I'm reprogramming my mind to eliminate the bad program, those negative thoughts, and be able to replace it and upgrade it to something that's actually going to be beneficial to me.
I like the way the term that you used. You're upgrading, right? We're not saying that the way that our mind thinks is horrific or bad in any way. It's more so that is it actually helping you? Are you feeling good about what's happening in your mind? And giving people the power that we have the ability to create change in our own mindset, in how we show up. And as we know, the more we gently practice, the more we're going to then start seeing that as a change within our belief systems, which then changes our behavior. And if we then act differently, even a tiny, tiny bit differently, that then creates an environment that can, again, challenge those thoughts, those beliefs, those limiting beliefs that we originally were trying to challenge.
Definitely. Yeah.
Do you find sometimes that in those moments, and hand on heart, I get stuck in this as well, do you find that sometimes it is hard to challenge our thinking or limiting beliefs?
Definitely. It's, I think that's the other thing is to just be gentle with yourself, because, I'm not here to say I'm perfect at all, but it can be, you could be tired, when I know when I'm tired or I'm hungry, or there's some stress, like it can just, things can happen, and that mindset that we're trying to be in can shift. And it's just a matter of being gentle with ourselves and saying, okay, like it's not like the end of the world. It's just like, okay, I've come off track a bit. Now let's just recognize that I can come back and be on the right path that is helpful for myself.
And going on from what we've just started talking about, one powerful concept in your book, Engage, Connect, Grow, is the words you say to yourself. So that is so pivotal in the actual work that we do need to do. We do need to look at what words do we actually say to ourselves. Can you explain how our internal dialogue affects our mental health and self-esteem?
I think it has a huge impact. And when I was in university, I saw a therapist for the first time, and back then it was in the 90s, and me going to see a therapist, like, it was a secret. I didn't tell anybody other than the girl I was dating at the time. Like, she knew, and nobody else knew I was going to see a therapist. But that therapist introduced me to the Feeling Good book, which is based on cognitive behavioral therapy. And that book it taught me about, and that speaks to what I mentioned earlier about just becoming more aware of those thoughts, because I didn't realize the impact they were having on me until I started to look at them closer and to write them down and become more aware of them. Because if we're constantly, beating ourselves up, telling ourselves negative things, it's no wonder that we're being stressed out, anxious, and in a depressed state, because that's just a constant message that we're hearing on a regular basis. And so it's so important to be able to find ways that work for ourselves, because I think different things are going to work differently for everybody, but there's so many options now. But yeah, to be able to at least become aware of those negative thoughts, if you will, or those thoughts that aren't helpful, fearful thoughts, and be able to shift them and move to that place where we're more loving to ourselves, more caring in that.
And it is a practice, I think in our practice of self-awareness, or again, self-reflection, we encourage that understanding the thought, understanding that it part of us believes that thought, not the whole of us, And even if there is a person that I find says, no, my whole being believes this thought 100%, after a little bit of practice of noticing and understanding maybe why that belief is there, we help the individual decipher between why that thought is there in the first place, or why those limiting beliefs are there, and really be able to start to break apart that hold it has on us. And as we know, the way we think influences how we feel, influences what we do or how we act. And sometimes we can give individuals strategies in each of these separate categories. Does it mean that you're never going to feel bad? Absolutely not. You're a human. You're allowed to have the whole spectrum of emotions. There's a difference between feeling an emotion and then getting so stuck in it where it's so debilitating and derogatory to self that it no longer becomes helpful. So I think when we look at trying to give people some practical ways and some motivation to kind of apply things in more of a constructive manner, I think it's normalizing that, it's going to take time. There are going to be days where it's not going to be easy. Like you said, Aaron, you're going to be tired at times, and it's okay that it's not something that you practice 24/7. But if you're aware of the steps, and hopefully after today's episode, your book and so many other tools that are available out there for people will be able to really encourage them that they do have the power if they choose to practice it.
Definitely.
Aaron, in your book, Engage, Connect, Grow, you talk about the importance of engaging with ourselves before we can truly connect with others. Why do you feel this self-engagement is foundational, especially in today's busy world?
I think the more that we know ourselves, like truly know ourselves, and be able to step into those, that fear that's inside of us, that, those parts of us that, maybe blaming ourselves or others or being like, the more we really know ourselves, the better that we are prepared to be able to heal ourselves. Because if we're actually emulating more of a self that's more, for myself, I was trying to be the people pleaser, right? So I was trying to emulate a person that really wasn't me in a lot of ways. It was just more this man that would be a good helper and be diplomatic and not cause any conflict. So that wasn't really who I am. And so the more that I got to know myself and to understand that there's and as you talked about, like there's all these feelings that I thought I couldn't feel anger. I thought I wasn't supposed to feel frustration and all these. I thought I was just supposed to be happy all the time. Right? I thought there was just one emotion, happiness, and so the more that we can get to know what's really going on inside of ourselves, that opens the door for us to be able to actually, create boundaries. Because I didn't have, my boundaries were very vague and not very clear. And so then you can step into being able to properly connect with others in a way that's more authentic and more true to your values and who you are.
I love that you've mentioned values. That's so important. And you use the term as well, programming. Our mind is being programmed based on, we're trying to kind of program that. But when we acknowledge and understand what parts of ourselves we like from that programming that we want to keep taking on into our next version, and we're going to have multiple versions of ourselves as we grow, and which parts maybe no longer serve us, don't align with us. The only way that you're going to actually find that is, if you build a better relationship with yourself. And sometimes it might mean asking yourself different questions. Sometimes it might mean taking yourself out on a date like you would anybody else. Sometimes it might mean just being in silence and seeing what comes up. And for many of us, that's scary. Like, what if I don't like who I truly am? What if I stop people pleasing, the person that's in there is actually someone I'm afraid of or don't like or people won't like? And I think that's the biggest barrier that we all find ourselves stuck in, and realizing that it doesn't have to be that scary. And if doing the work on your own is scary and you do need someone to help you sit in the perceived darkness or fear that's to come, please reach out and know that there are going to be people there that will hold your hand through it.
Yeah, it's so important.
You emphasize journaling as a powerful tool for personal growth in your book, Aaron. How has journaling impacted your life, and why do you see it as essential for mental well-being?
I was doing it at a young age, more kind of doodling and drawing as a way to relax my mind and to focus. And then as I got older, I started, and university seemed to be, I know I've talked a lot about this interview, but university was like this pivotal moment where I started to really become more aware of the mental stuff going on for me. And I started writing out like there's just all this frustration and anger inside of me. So I just started writing it out. And it was tough at first because there was a part of me that was afraid that, okay, I'm going to write out these thoughts that I don't want other people to hear or read about, right? And so I would just scribble it out. Like I'd write it out, but then I'd make it so no one could read it, or I'd rip up the paper. I'm like, I can write this out, and not anybody has to read it. But it just, over time, as I did that, I started to feel better, and I started to realize, okay, there's something to this, and it just became a habit for me. And there wasn't as much of a structure the way I journaled. As I know that there's all kinds of resources out now that you can have a very structured journal, and that the only structure I typically would have, I'd have the date on it just so I could be able to look back and see how I was feeling at a certain point in time. Because when I did that, when I look back at my old journals and I could tell what time of year it was, I noticed patterns where the winter months, it's darker and gloomier here. I was having a lot more journaling entries that were quite negative, and I was down and not feeling good. And then when it was springtime, summer, which I actually noticed I didn't write a lot in the springtime and summer because I was feeling good. I actually wrote more when I was down than I was feeling good. So over time, I've started to make sure that I'm writing, the times that I feel good. But it's powerful. And then, and I mentioned in my book, because there's research that I didn't realize until my mid-30s, that there's actually research that was done that it shows that it can actually impact and have positive impacts on your mental health, but also like kidney function, like organ function. There's all kinds of other health benefits of being able to use self-expressive writing. It's amazing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And when we look at journaling, I love that you've identified that there is no particular way that it needs to be done or has to be done. It's the expression. And externalizing what's happening internally quietens the mind after a while. It's no longer bouncing around in here unnecessarily. We can verbalize it, whether it is through verbal or written format, whatever someone chooses or how they choose to journal. It allows them to actually see what it is that's there. And we can decipher so many messages from what's bouncing around, whether it is the same patterns that are coming up, or messages in between the words that we're writing, or needs that we have not yet fulfilled and are kind of showing up. So I think that's such a powerful, powerful tool in being able to engage in. And I think when we don't have safe spaces to go to, and I know that you mentioned when you first accessed support for yourself, you did it in secret and no one really knew about it. To actually have a space where you can go to that feels safe, that feels contained, is actually a really important thing, especially, and again, I might be stereotyping here, but we know growing up, men are taught, or were taught more so, to suppress all of what they think, what they feel. So being able to engage in a way of expression is pivotal for someone's connection to self, and I think for them to actually start slowly to understand themselves on a deeper level and work through some of the thoughts, emotions, and feelings that they might be experiencing.
Oh, definitely. No, I love how you highlighted all that. It's so important. And one thing I didn't mention about the therapist that I saw is within about 2 sessions of seeing them, they suggested I go to group therapy. And it took a lot of energy and confidence to just see the therapist one-on-one. That going to group therapy absolutely terrified me. That I was getting comfortable and being able to have this one-on-one conversation, and then and I don't know if it's just part of a program that he was involved with, because he had a self-esteem program. That was what it was. Yeah. So I found myself going within a very quick period of time, going from one-on-one therapy to group therapy. And it actually shut me down for most of the time that I was there. I didn't say anything because took so much for me to actually admit that, or I guess I was scared of admitting that I had an issue. But then as I heard people in the room talk about the challenges they were having with self-esteem, even me not saying anything, it was amazing how powerful it was just to be in the room with others that are going through the same thing. And even though I had all this fear about going to it, over time, it became okay. And I was okay with it. And I started to talk. I didn't do a lot. It took me to my 30s where I did, I participated more in kind of group type of therapy. But back then in university, it was a stepping stone for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I really do love that you have integrated actually a lot of journal entries that are your personal entries that are very relevant in the book to show people aspects of that deeper reflective practice that you engaged in. And that's also too in the same way that you were trying to be brave to go to the group session and kind of face the things that you were struggling with. This is also a really brave, courageous thing that you've done in sharing your personal journal entries relevant to the chapters in the book. I found that really great to be able to get a deeper personal insight into you, where it's not just here, do the skills. It's I will trickle some personal, like a personal touch of myself through the book. I found that really great.
Yeah, I felt like, and I was definitely struggled with, okay, do I want to actually share? I didn't share all my journal entries because there's some things I think, okay, this is more personal, but I did feel like if I was able to share, a period of time, especially on the different topics in the book, here's a period of time where I was struggling, and then be able to show 5-10 years later as to what I'm journaling related to that topic. At that period, it showed the comparison with in a lot of the chapters. I was trying to do that just to not only give people an idea of how they can journal, but also that the benefits that it over time that I was able to get from it, and how I was able to get closer to my true self from utilizing that tool. Yeah.
And yeah, let's talk about the benefits for those who might be new to journaling or skeptical about its benefits. What you mentioned that it helps a deeper connection to yourself, it's self-expression. You're able to kind of feel better over time, but any other benefits that you actually started seeing by engaging in journaling?
It helped me, I guess, use my voice more. Like I started to recognize that, okay, my voice matters. I can actually, express it. I don't have to express it to everybody. I can just, sharing with myself is a fantastic start. It actually brought a lot of creativity because some of the journal entries are more like poems for me than, and I think one of them, I can't remember if I shared it in the book or not, but there's a song that I wrote that, and so there's this creativity that came out in me from just doing it, and I just felt more calm and more peaceful at times from being able to just share what was going on for me. It created this space where I wasn't feeling the stress like I used to, or I could actually overcome it, the anxiety or the stress. I could move through it a lot easier from being able to do that.
Normally when I sit down to journal, most of the time it is just to express what I would like or what I would like to manifest. Sometimes I use a what I'm grateful for type of prompt. What type of journal exercises that you really gravitate to, even just one, that might actually be impactful to our listeners or even clients that you've had in the past?
Yeah, there's one that comes to mind that I thought I'd share, and it's actually an anger release exercise that I learned when I did my counseling training program, and it's actually a total of 10 steps, and the idea behind it is that you're writing out about a situation that's frustrating for you or that's bringing up some anger, and the first few steps are really just setting the stage as to what was the event. that happened, and then who was involved. So being more factual, who was there, where was it, what happened, getting all the facts out, and then you move into actually just writing out. First you want to write out what do you want to get out of this exercise. So by the end of this, how do you want to feel once you're done this? And then one of the earlier steps is just to write out every angry statement, every angry word, everything that you want to get out. You just write that out on paper. And then from there, it's an exercise where you're looking at, okay, this feeling of anger that's coming up. When did this happen? Like, when was the first time it happened? So just like when is you're kind of answering that question, just like when, and you keep answering that question over a period of time of just, you keep writing out, like, how would you answer just like when, to kind of get to the core of when this feeling showed up. And then from there, it's then exploring around the truth behind it. So, and what were you believing about? So what was the false belief that you're believing about yourself in that moment, and then what is actually true about you, and to be able to connect to the truth about yourself, and then the end of it is you're actually reflecting on those involved. What's actually true for, like, so what's true for you? What's the truth about you? But also, what's true about the people involved? Like, were they just doing the best they could? And really looking at any type of blame or judgments that's there. How could you release that? And then getting to a place where you're feeling like you are better connected to your truth of who you are, and the actual belief that's actually resonates with you versus this false belief that you may have been believing all the time. And there's a way to do it in person with somebody as having a partner, but the journaling exercise is powerful as well.
No, absolutely. It sounds like not only does it allow the person to express themselves, it allows a deeper understanding of why the anger is there. Is it something from the past that may have contributed to a reactivation of the anger today or whenever the incident was? And even just as you were saying that, I'm sure that would then allow the softening of the anger to then understand, well, what's mine? What's theirs? How do I move through this in a really, really helpful way, rather than just being stuck in the anger, not feeling like one can shift it or create change for themselves if they need to step up in any way. That's super powerful.
It is. And that just like when step actually allows for the emotions to come up that are the anger's been blocking. So when I've done this exercise, I was blocking a lot of sadness. And as a guy, it's more so today. It's okay, and I love that it's more common. But back in the day, men don't cry, right? And so I had all these tears that just showed up, the sadness that I had never allowed to be present, and so that just allows those feelings to come up that are actually what need to be felt versus the anger.
No, absolutely. Aaron, as we know, depression can feel so isolating and overwhelming. You've been open about your own experiences with depression. How would you describe your experience with it, and what helped you start seeing a way through it?
Yeah, so for me, I know I alluded to it a little bit earlier, it was these periods. It could be 2 weeks, it could be a few months, where everything seemed bleak, everything seemed dark, everything seemed impossible. And I know, when I entered the workforce and was in these sales positions and the pressure was on, it would take so much energy to get out of bed, get my suit on and go to work, and essentially put a mask on that I was okay. And then come home at the end of the day, and especially on the weekends, just not wanting to associate with anybody, not wanting to do anything, and have no motivation to exercise, no motivation to take care of myself. Just want to, I would be eating a lot of carbs and watching a lot of movies and finding reasons to not do anything. And so it was a struggle. It was definitely a struggle. And I did see therapists quite a bit, in my 20s and 30s, and still do today. But the initial therapies were still kind of in secret for quite some time. And I was kind of seeing the same type of therapist, someone that was more a psychologist, and I would basically get, I'd go to maybe 3 or 4 6 sessions, feel great. I'd also be taking some antidepressants, and I'd start to feel better, and everything's fine. And then I'd be like, okay, I don't need to go anymore. I don't need to take the medication anymore, right? And then 6 months later, I'm back down in that depressed state again, and the cycle just kept continuing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I like that you were quite open, and thank you so much for your honesty there, Aaron. I know it's hard to show our vulnerability and be so raw with our experiences. I really like that you identified the pattern of, oh, I'm feeling great, I'll disengage, and then the same things would actually resurface. And we're not saying one has to be stuck in therapy forever. Definitely that's not good. Therapy is not supposed to be around forever. But it is something that you need to engage in enough to be able to break apart those underlying patterns that are actually feeding your limiting beliefs or your problematic behaviors that then can give you the best chance should you then space out therapy and go out there and do life on your own, But interesting that you noticed those cycles naturally happening. And I have so many of my clients fall into that trap. And there are times where I also fall into the trap, even though I've got all the skills. They're like, I don't need to engage in them now. So
and that spoke to the destination, thinking, okay, I'm happy. I've made it. I'm happy now. Everything's fine. Got it figured out. And it was not.
What insights from your journey might help those who feel just as overwhelmed or stuck in a dark place?
Yeah. So the thing that I learned, so when I was 37, I was probably in the deepest, darkest depression I'd ever been in. And I was going through a separation with my first marriage, and really feeling lost. I was not doing well in the job. I guess I was doing okay in the job I was in, but I was not happy and not performing at the level they wanted to be at. And my first son was almost 2 years old. So I'm, here I am feeling like I should have everything, and everything should be going well. And now going into separation, marriage breakdown, and I was on my computer in there was a basement of this townhouse that we owned at the time. And I was in the basement every evening for a period of weeks, trying to figure out what's wrong with me and searching online, just looking for, okay, how do I fix this? And I actually went, there was a weekend where I went to a Hay House event, and I saw Wayne Dyer, I saw Marianne Williamson, and a whole bunch of other speakers. And I came back from that event, and I realized, it just hit me that I'd been asking myself the wrong question. I was asking myself, what's wrong with me? And just from hearing from them and doing some journaling and reviewing things and reflecting, I realized I needed to ask myself, what is this for?
Yeah.
And shift my perspective. And so that was pivotal for me.
So good.
Like, what is this for? And to see what gifts I can find from what was going on for me. And that helped me then find a therapist that actually was one that understood what I was going through. Because over the years, I just kind of found anyone that I could find that was close to where I lived and was convenient for the timing and that. And so I searched for one that actually understood what I've been going through. And this therapist, after a couple sessions, asked me, what is depression for you? And I explained, similar to what I said just a bit ago there, it's this dark, gloomy cloud over my head where everything seems impossible, everything seems bleak. And she said, yeah, definitely that sounds like that's depression for you. She said, there's another way to look at it. And I said, what's that? And she said, depression can be looked at anger turned inward.
Mm-hmm.
And when she said that, I was ready to hear that. It actually landed for me, and it made sense, because it was almost like all the dots connected for me to recognize that I had I guess my relationship with anger was not a healthy one. because I'd been stuffing it for so long. I've been stuffing it down and not connecting to my anger. I thought that being angry meant I was a bad man. That was bad and wrong, and no one's gonna like me if I'm angry, and if I am angry, I'm always gonna be angry. Like if that anger comes out, it's not going away. And so that is something that I teach my clients is to recognize, like, and just reflect on their relationship with their anger and look at healthy ways to be able to work with it. Similar to and one of those ways is that exercise I shared, the journaling exercise. But the better that we can connect to the anger and understand that it's healthy to be angry, it's okay to be angry, and that was so powerful in helping me with my depression. It actually I was able to come off my medication, and to be, because the problem with the medication for me was I wasn't able to feel anything, and she was trying to get me to feel things, and to bring up that frustration, bring up that anger, because to bring that up is part of the healing process.
Absolutely. That I love that statement. Depression is like anger turned inward. That, yes, we beat ourselves up, we pull ourselves down, and we don't feel like we deserve to be getting back up, So and I really like the connection for you personally of it being associated with all this anger and all this processing that needs to happen for you to actually then, one, get into the deeper emotions that are driving your depression, and then slowly learn how to work through them and let them go and process them. That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that, Aaron. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah.
You talk about resilience in your book. How did resilience help you through difficult times, and what does building resilience look like from a day-to-day context?
Yeah, I think for me, it's this feeling inside of me that just it just kept me going, and it's hard to describe it, but it was just this power inside of me that no matter how bleak things felt, how dark things got, it's just I would get to a place where I'm like, I just need to take a step forward. There was always a belief in me that I knew I could get through something, even though it seemed tough, even though it seemed hard, that I could do it. And one story around that is I talked about how I avoided public speaking in university. Well, unbeknownst to me, eventually my career took me to work for a professional speaker. And so here I am, afraid of presenting. I work for a professional speaker. And so he ultimately took me to a Toastmasters meeting. And I was absolutely terrified because I had avoided Toastmasters. I had found reasons to not go to those meetings for so many years. I'd find an evening that would work, and then I'd just not go. But he told me, you don't have to say anything. You can sit in the back of the room and not do a thing. And like, this was just my greatest fear, to get up in front of people and speak, which was interesting because when I was a kid, I loved to perform. But as soon as I became a teenager, the fear just showed up, and I just did not want to go there. And even though there was this desire in me to do it, I did kind of dream of being a performer of some capacity. But the fear just overtook me. And so I went all in for a year at Toastmasters because this fellow I worked with, he showed me that first thing, when you go to a first meeting, you don't have to say anything. So I actually went in knowing there's nothing to be afraid of. I actually did get up and speak for a couple minutes, which surprised me. But I also it was a safe space. You talked about a safe space. Like, this was a safe space. And once I found a safe space to be in, whether it was, at Toastmasters, or it was with the therapist, or it was with the friends and the connections I had around me, that safe space, it funneled that resilience to just move forward. I'm just going to take a step. It doesn't have to be the biggest step. It can be a small step to move forward. And I just would take that small step.
Yeah.
And yeah.
A few things you said there. I love that you were able to identify what your child self-loved, and how through our experience of the world and growing up and the programming, we move away from that. and to be able to reconnect gently back with what excites us, what feels natural, away from what we think is scary, is, those are those glimmers, parts of ourselves that we naturally are going to get back to because they're true to who we authentically are. So to be able to remember okay, what did I used to love when I didn't feel so bogged down by these fears or these barriers that I've created over the years. The other thing I really liked that you highlighted there, and what came up for me, is that you don't have to wait until you are brave or resilient or healed to do some of the things that you are actually petrified of. Resilience and bravery and courage is the practice of trying, irrespective of how scared we are of that. Leaning into discomfort is so important for our growth and for that courage and bravery to keep building. And over time, the resilience is what will continue to then grow over our period, our engagement of those activities, behaviors, things that we are so scared of.
Totally. And yeah, just to be able to move forward and know that any progress, whether it's, whether a mistake is made or there's amazing success, it's progress. It's not about being perfect. And I kind of connected to needing to be perfect at times, and things have to be completely perfect before I can do something. And I recognize that, no, I just need to progress. I just need progress, move forward a bit.
Yep, absolutely. Aaron, the Connect section of your book emphasizes reconnecting with one's values and creating a strong support network. Why is understanding our values so important in building authentic connections with others?
Yeah, for me, it took me a while to understand the importance of connecting to one's values. It seemed, I don't know, my mind just couldn't connect the dots, and it took me a while to understand it until I started to recognize that our values it's kind of it demonstrates who we are in the world, right? What we value. So do we value family? Do we value a career? Do we value making money? Do we value connection with others? And those values are essentially, for me, what I found is that they're guiding. They're part of like a guidance tool, like our GPS, our internal GPS, if you will. Because if we need to make a decision about something, because I struggled with making a decision. I when I was trying to make sure that everybody else was okay before I, been making the decision before I was, that's going against my values. And so it's a guiding mechanism that if connection to others, if being authentic is a value for me, if growing is a value for me, then when I make a decision about something, I can reflect on those and then make the decision, versus just trying to make a decision kind of on the fly and making it more about maybe someone else's values versus myself. So I think it's so important to do work on one's values, to be able to just feel more authentic, feel more like you're moving forward because it's important to you. And it also can be important to others and connecting with others, but it's got to feel right for yourself as well.
And I love that you've identified it is a process to try and figure that out. And values can change depending on where you are in your own journey and development age, environment. The one thing that really resonates that I think I found through your book as well is being able to figure out your own values to get a deeper connection with self. It then helps you also identify those values in others and helps build strong relationships with your people, right? It's not to say you have to have exactly all the interests and values and things that are identical to other people in your group. But if there are underlying themes that you really connect with and you can share those values together, that creates such beautiful bonds with people in your workspace, people as friends. And I think the more we're able to understand our true self deeply, and we can see that in other people, that will gravitate towards us, we then feel loved and connected in our relationships. I know so much through my younger years, I didn't know myself. I didn't know who I was. I, again, was wearing a mask like we all do, acting in a facade-like way. So the people I was attracting weren't my people. They were my people for that time that matched what I needed and who I was at that time. But now that I think back of who I actually was, and one, I wasn't connected to myself. I was definitely not connected to my values. But at the same time, sometimes you look back and you're like, wow, that person that I was is so different to who I am today. And it's because of the work that we would naturally do to then develop a stronger bond with ourselves, which then creates the shift in our relationships and friends and colleagues and things like that as well.
Definitely. Yeah. And what I found was so powerful is that when I was more solid in my values, people would trust me more. People would actually want to connect with me more. But when I was all wishy-washy and could make decisions, the connections with people was more superficial. They didn't know how to connect with me because I didn't know how to stand my ground and stand for what was important to me. Yeah, no, it's so powerful. Yeah.
You emphasize taking small intentional actions. What advice do you have about someone starting their personal growth journey if they are feeling really overwhelmed with where to begin?
Yeah, I was reflecting on where I kind of began when I was overwhelmed in that, and I think the biggest thing is just to take one step. You don't need to figure it all out. Just and I think the step that I typically would take first was around exercise, because I knew if I was exercising more, my mental state would improve. So typically what I would do is I wouldn't worry about creating some, complex workout exercise, or, figure out, okay, I'm going to buy a gym pass and then go to the gym. I need to go three or four times a week. No, I would just say, I'm going to just, this 1 week, I'm going to do a 10-minute walk around the neighborhood. Right? Next week, I'm going to do 2 10-minute walks around the neighborhood. Just start really small so that you set yourself up for success. Because a lot of people, especially as we're getting close to the new year, and when this is being recorded, a lot of people, they will, just go all in the beginning of January, right? A new year, and very quickly fall back into old habits because they didn't start small. So just start small. You could start journaling once a week. You could start exercising once a week. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And sometimes to add to that, if the taking action part is really hard for our listeners or for any one of us, sometimes just reflecting on why we want things to be different. What are some of the things right now that don't feel so good, that, make you feel really down or are adding to things being really, really hard? What are your reasons to then take that first step, whether it is picking up the pen and journaling, or whether it is, I'm actually just going to walk to the letterbox because that's all I can master up today. Why? What motivation is there for you to just do that? And sometimes when we connect to that, it helps us commit to that one tiny step. And it's not going to be exactly the same every day. You might have, energy to walk down the street one day and literally to the bin the next. So really just being able to be kind and nurturing to yourself through the process of change. And like you said, taking it one tiny step. You don't have to go all in. It doesn't have to change literally from January 1st. It does not. It just taking it gently and slowly is important.
Yeah. I really appreciate you mentioning the why, because the why is the motivating factor, because that'll help with the additional steps, taking the steps every week, as why, connecting to why you want to accomplish is so good. Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the book again. You highlighted gratitude and affirmations as part of self-empowerment. How can integrating these practices into daily life transform one's mindset?
Yeah, that again speaks to the why that we were just talking about there, is be really connecting to what you're grateful for that you have right now in this moment, is so important, because then you're in the present moment, and you're recognizing that you have food in your fridge, you have a roof over your head, you have your family, right? You have your health. Like, these things are just, they're fundamental things, they're simple things, but some people don't have these things, right? And so to connect to what you have versus what you don't have can clear your mind over time, because you're really looking at the positive, the appreciation for what you have, and that can go so far with things. Yeah.
Your work also touches on finding meaning and purpose, Aaron. How would you guide someone who is searching for deeper fulfillment in life?
Yeah, I think we've talked a lot about that today, like connecting to your values, connecting to your feelings, taking care of yourself. Like self-love was actually wasn't a goal of mine until I went through that separation, and I went to a workshop, and they asked us to set, like, what's your goal for this workshop? And self-love kind of just spoke to me that I needed to take care of myself. I needed to love myself no matter what. I needed to everything I did needed to be loving to myself. And that will take, that took me to a deeper understanding of who I am. Like meditation will help with that and all these different techniques, but the intention of self-love, unconditional love towards yourself, I think is a good goal to focus on, to be able to provide that deeper connection. And then just progress will get you there along the way as you keep connecting to that.
And it's okay for any one of us to not know what that looks like. I agree with you. I think early in my own experience as well, definitely didn't love myself. I thought I did, but not really, not on a deeper level. And it is really confronting when you, one, admit that to yourself truly, and then make the tiny steps to practice. And there are going to be days where it's stronger and other days where it's really hard to master kindness, love, or compassion to yourself. And I think we forget what self-love actually is. It's not, it's all of these things put together. It's self-acceptance and appreciation and gratitude to self and kindness to self, compassion to self. Like when we look at love, of what self-love actually is, it's the practice of all of those things inward. So it's, how to be that. We are that freely to so many people externally. It's gently learning how to allow ourselves to do that for ourselves and accept the self-love that we then choose to practice for ourselves as well.
So important. Yeah.
Looking forward, Aaron, what are some of your hopes and aspirations for Engage Coaching Group and the impact you want to make?
Yeah, so I have been helping a lot of men over the last number of years, and so my hope is to help men heal from depression. And when I say depression, it's I'm referring to situational depression. So it's related to their relationship, their career, their life. Something's showing up where they need help with healing the stress or the struggle that's showing up there. And so, I'm looking to build a community to help educate more men through my book, and also support them through coaching, and then also looking at doing some events, in-person events, to be able to bring connection as well.
That is amazing. So exciting too. And being able to support any types of humans, but especially men that are going to find that connection within themselves to then work through those underlying illnesses and challenges. That's phenomenal. Sounds like it's very exciting times for you ahead.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. To wrap up, Aaron, for listeners who may be at the beginning of their journey or feeling overwhelmed, what's one piece of advice, message, or key insight you'd want them to take away from our conversation today?
There's a quote from Carl Jung that I continually share with people and remind myself, because Carl Jung was quoted saying that those who look outside dream and those who look inside awake. And so keep going. It's
definitely a strong quote, isn't it?
Yeah, keep the internal, the inner work, and focusing on the inner work is going to get you to where you want to be.
And lastly, how can our listeners get a hold of your book, get in touch, or work with you if they have found a connection with you today?
Yeah, Engage, Connect, Grow is on Amazon. You can find it on Amazon, and then you can visit engagecoachinggroup.com as well and find the book there. And then there's actually a free resource, 3 keys that you must master to thrive in your personal, professional, and family life that people can download there as well. And Engage Coaching Group is also on Facebook. You can find us there.
Amazing. And I'll, of course, share all of Aaron's details down below in the description so you can have easy access to everything we've spoken about today. Aaron, thank you so much for your time today. It was an absolute honor to get to know your story and also be able to talk about your book. And I very much look forward to a potential future episode that we can then explore, or any future books that you might also then create. Thank you again. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to be here.